Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is Sandy. We're going to get started in just a minute. Appreciate you all being here early. We're going to see if we can get all the technical stuff handled so we can start on time. All right, do me a favor. You should be able to see the slides right now. It says get the most from year-end fundraising, has the SmartSprout logo and a little picture of me. If you can see that and you can hear me okay, would you just type in the Q&A box and let me know that all is well? And then I will know that we are good to go. Those of you who are just joining in, welcome. We're going to get started here in just a minute. We're doing a quick tech check. George, thank you. Hello, Phyllis. How are you? All is well. Thank you. Appreciate you guys being on here early. There are several of you who are early birds. You are here ready to go. All right, fantastic. Others are saying, yes, you can hear, you can see the slides. Awesome. Just curious, before we get started, does anybody else feel like now that Labor Day has come and gone, like the holidays are pending? Whew. For me, it just feels, even though it's still really hot outside, it just feels like, holy moly, here we go. It's the downhill slide. The holidays will be here before we know it. It's kind of crazy. Does anybody else feel that way, or is it just me? See it on the horizon. Yeah, September and October are awesome, but whew. And I guess because I've worked in fundraising for so long, I know what it means to get into the fall. It's like, it's fundraising season. We got a lot going on. That's the way it is, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today, interestingly enough. For those of you who just joined in, welcome. Actually, my official clock just kicked over to 3 Eastern, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And for the recording, welcome everybody. I'm super glad you're here. This is Sandy Reese, and it is Project SmartSprout training time. Our topic today is how to get the most from year-end fundraising. And I was just saying, yeah, it's early September, even though it still feels like summer outside, still pretty warm. But it's fundraising season. In my world, fundraising season starts September 1st. And it's going to go through probably the first few days of January, because we'll still have catch-up stuff to do then. And pretty much buckle up and hang on for a while. It's a wild ride. I can remember some times in my career when, God, it just, whew. Actually, it would start when high school football season started. When I was at the food bank, we had a huge food drive that we did with high schools all across East Tennessee. It was awesome. And it would not let up until it would take me till about the middle of January to dig out from all the holiday stuff. It was nuts. It was crazy. It was chaotic, but it was also incredibly productive and quite successful. Here's what I think made some of that. And this is back in the day before we had any such thing as Giving Tuesday. This was before there was, I mean, we weren't even doing online fundraising back in those days. I remember building the first website at the food bank, and we were like, well, let's just see what happens. It was kind of crazy. You have so many more resources now than what I had back then. But here's what I think really worked, and that was I spent most of the summer planning. And each year that went by, I would take what happened the previous year, evaluate it, get rid of what didn't work anymore, expand on those things that did work. So I always felt really confident that what I was going into the fall with was the absolute best that I could do. It was the most productive things, the greatest ROI, and it worked. It worked in a big way. There was a lot to it. There's a lot of pieces and parts, and that's what you're going to see today as we walk through this. In fact, here's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about why year-end matters. I don't think I'm going to have to do too much convincing there. I think you guys all get it. We're going to talk about what counts as year-end, what your plan should look like. You've got some great handouts. If you didn't download those yet, there is a tab on your GoToWebinar dashboard that has the handouts, and there are two. One has several pages in it, and the other one is a calendar, and I'll pull those up in just a second. We'll have a look at those. And we're going to talk about some must-do activities. There's a lot that you can pick and choose from. So in a way, this is like going to Salsaritas or Chipotle or Moe's, one of those. I love those places. What I like about them is you can decide, do you want a burrito or do you want a bowl? And then what do you want? Do you want it to be vegetarian? Do you want chicken? And then you can choose what kind of beans you want and what kind of toppings. I love that. And in a way, your year-end plan is going to be kind of like that. There's going to be some stuff you definitely want to include, but then whether or not you put cheese on it is up to you. You don't have to do cheese. Some of you may want to do cheese. Others of you are going to choose something else. But I'm going to show you what the must-do activities are. And then what I want you to do is really think about what your organization has going for it and what you already have planned that doesn't fall into the realm of fundraising, because there may be a way to really leverage those activities into either fundraising or awareness building or relationship building. And if you can do that, those are good things. This is a fantastic time of year to do all of that. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, as we go, if you have questions, please feel free to type those in the Q&A box. I will be keeping an eye on that and monitoring those, and I'll try to answer them as we go. Many of you know how this works about asking questions. All right, so what is year end? Well, there's probably a lot of different ways to define it. Personally, I think September 1, we start the slide. Because it's fundraising season, kids are back in school. I mean, how many of you have seen dozens of pictures on Facebook lately of friends who are posting their kids with their back to school pictures, right? It's everywhere. Some of you may have done that. And what that tells us is, okay, we're back in the groove. We're into a new year. The weather's going to start changing soon if it hasn't already in your area. And then before we know it, it's going to be November, and then the holidays are on top of us. Some people will define year end as November and December. I think you got to start in September. That's why we're having this webinar now. Even though in my mind it's already fundraising season, you still have time to plan what you want to do later this month. You can plan some things for October, but you definitely got to plan November and December. And there's several things that you want to make sure that you have in your plan, because you don't want to get left out. And really, this is the deal. If you if you don't include these things, you're going to be conspicuously absent. You'll have donors wondering where you are. So get this. I found this statistic not too terribly long ago that 30%, that's a third of all nonprofits raise 25 to 50% of their annual revenue from their year-end ask. Isn't that crazy? So maybe they're considering their year-end ask an appeal that goes out in November. Maybe they consider it more of a campaign where it's an appeal that goes out in November, and then it's an email in December, and maybe something else. But that's a lot of money that is raised at year end. I'm trying to remember, I just wrote an article about that the other day, and it was a significant amount of money that's raised online in December, a significant more in the last 3 days of December. So we need to pay attention to this. Why? Because if you're not right there in the middle of that, you are going to be left out. You'll be conspicuously absent, because I guarantee you every other nonprofit is going to be showing up in your donors' mailbox and inbox. You don't want to miss out on the opportunity to get those donations. So fundraising season, September 1 through December 31. And one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do, and you're going to see in one of the handouts, is to calendar this all out. It's important to have a calendar for the whole year, but there's a lot that you can do this time of year, and you want to make sure that you have a way to keep it all organized. You don't want this stuff to sneak up on you, because listen, nobody does their best work at the last minute. You want to have plenty of time to think through these things. You want to have time if you need to get graphics designed, or if you need to have somebody review something that you've written. You got to build the time in for all that kind of support. So as I think about what I've done for year end and what I have coached a lot of people through, and I can tell you some stories about some organizations that have had amazing year end, there's a handful of things that really are critical. And here they are. It's about the messaging that you use. Messaging, I think, is critical all the time, but we're gonna nail this. We're gonna talk a lot about messaging today. Timing is important. And what I mean by timing is, how do the pieces and parts of your year-end campaign fit together? And how does that work given holidays and other things that are happening within your organization or within your community? So you have to really watch the timing of things. Cross-channel promotion. Ooh, now we're getting technical. I had somebody tell me just earlier today that I was a marketing whiz, and I kind of laughed. I'm like, well, I don't know about that. But I do know about things like cross-channel promotion. And what that means is that you are using various methods for communicating with your donors to promote other things. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. And then, of course, calendaring and scheduling, because this ultimately is what will keep you organized and give you the leverage to bring other volunteers and your board into the plan for year end and get their help so that it's not all on your shoulders. Yeah. So do this for me. Type in the Q&A box and tell me which one of these four are you most excited to learn more about today as we listen to my crazy dog bark. Just type in the Q&A. Are you most interested in messaging? Are you more interested in timing? Is it cross-channel promotion, calendaring and scheduling? What are you most excited to learn about today? Anne says messaging. Dawn Owens, I'm so excited to see you here today. Cross-channel promotion. Oh, you just made my day. Shelly says messaging. Oh, Megan is unable to download the Word document. Okay. Oh, good. Megan got it. Okay. Let's see. Phyllis, messaging. Excellent. I can definitely help you with that. Monique, timing. Anne's also curious about the cross-channel promotion. Catherine's cross-channel. Sharon. Hey, Sharon O'Connor. Calendaring and scheduling. Dawn, so excited to have you back in my space. Megan, cross-channel promotion and the importance of mailing versus digital. Okay, let me make a note. We will definitely talk about that. And if I forget, you remind me, okay? Mailing versus digital. So I got a note here, and I'll talk about that when we get there. All right, excellent. Thanks, you guys, for playing with me. So let's dig in. I'm going to kind of go in order with these. Let's talk about messaging. When I say messaging, what do you think I mean by that? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you what I mean. I'm talking about your story and how you tell it. In other words, what you say to people. I've seen a couple of Facebook ads and Facebook promotions lately that I'm probably going to start doing screen capture and just sharing with you. One of them literally said, help us meet our goal of $25,000. That's not a very good message. That's not compelling or interesting at all. And I was really sad for this organization. It's a cat rescue. And I wanted to I wanted to call them and go, you guys would be so much better off if you would say, help us rescue a cat. It costs $6.20 a day to rescue a cat and do whatever they do. That's way more compelling than help us reach our $25,000 goal, which is boring. Now, we got to really think about this. Some of you may be going, yeah, I get it. But you got to really watch, because if you get into a time crunch, guess what your default is? Your default is to talk about your goals, your intentions, and what's on your plate. And we've got to flip that. We got to always, 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 with the messaging, make it interesting to the donor. So your story is not, we're a 501c3. We have 6 programs in 3 counties. That's fundraising French, the we, us, and we have to ditch that. We have to talk about what's interesting to the donor, because when you do that, you're going to see your donations go up. So how about this? Every day, 10 to 15 dogs and cats arrive at our shelter, and we want them to have a healthy, happy second chance at life. That is better than our goal is to raise $25,000. We're a 501c3. We blah, 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 blah. When I was at the food bank, and I'll tell you several stories about this one particular year, and I don't remember exactly what year it was. It might have been 2002, 2003. It was early in the 2000s. And we decided to integrate the year end into a campaign. Now, that sounds really fancy, but it wasn't. Here's what that meant. To me, it meant we're going to have one message that we share with people, and we're going to have maybe 3 or 4 different graphics, and we're going to use them consistently. And the graphics were simply photos. There were photos that we used very consistently throughout everything we were doing. We had them on our website. We put them in our newsletter. They went in the appeal. One of them was on a billboard. Like, there was a lot of stuff we were doing. You use these graphics consistently. And so we had an integrated campaign. And what that meant was everything we did supported the next thing that happened. And when you do that, things start to build on each other and people will start to remember you. There's an old marketing saying that somebody has to see your message. Somebody brand new who doesn't know your organization has to see your message 7 times before they remember it. These days, it's way worse. It's probably like 50 times. And those people who are already your donors, they're already your supporters, you've got to get their attention. And so they're going to have to see your message multiple times before they go, oh, wait, yeah, oh, gosh, yeah, I was going to give them a donation. Okay, so we have to be consistent, and the more consistent you can be with your graphics, your photos, the images you're using, the messaging, the words, the phrases, when you can be very consistent, it's going to serve you incredibly well. So that's your first nugget. Be sure and write that down, to be very consistent with what you say and the images that you use. Now, as you're crafting your message, I want you to really think about what you're trying to do, not your goal, but talk about the need. We used that year at the food bank a message of hunger knows no holiday. Hunger knows no holiday. So we talked about consistently how people don't stop being hungry because it's the holidays and we need to help out. And it's great for people to help out during the holidays, but they're still going to be hungry in January. People who are food insecure in December are still food insecure in January. So we have to help. So one of the things that we did was to really shine the spotlight on the need. Now, this is one I was just talking in the Facebook group with Candace. I was just looking real quick to see if she was on here. So Candace, if you're listening to the recording, this is what you and I have been talking about in the Facebook group. Candace's organization serves middle school girls, and she said she couldn't figure out how to calculate this because there's the need, and then you talk about the impact, and then you basically subtract the impact from the need, and you can tell people, here's how many people still need service. And this is a great thing. When you can identify the gap, then people get excited about that, because what you've done is you've created a hole. People like to fill a hole. So in Candace's situation, I was encouraging her to define, is it a certain demographic in every school in her county? Is it certain schools in her county? Because if she can, like, let's say she picks 3 schools in her county that they want to serve the middle school girls, we can get that number. We can find out exactly how many girls that is. And then, so that gives her the universe of what she's trying to do and how many she's trying to serve. Then she can easily count how many they're serving now and subtract that. And now she can tell people what we're trying to do is to provide these girls with fill in the blank. I don't remember off the top of my head what the service was. And here's how many girls are waiting for that service. That's what people get interested in, eliminating waiting lists and helping to fill those holes. All right, is this making sense to you? Type in the Q&A and let me know if it is. Phyllis Spangler can do something similar. Phyllis's organization provides adult day services for folks with dementia and issues like that. So Phyllis might be able to figure out how many people are at risk of that, or how many there are in the area. She knows how many she's serving, so she could talk about the gap, how many are still waiting to be served. All right, cool. Dawn's loving the hunger knows no holiday. Yeah, you might be able to use that or some variation on that, Dawn, for your organization. Yeah, okay, good. Annie's liking the idea of there's a hole, people are going to fill the hole. I'm telling you, this will work. And think about if you've seen this. So you guys know I work with a lot of animal welfare groups, and we see this all the time with those groups. Can think about specifically one that had a dog that came in that had gotten its leg caught in a trap, like a raccoon trap, with the jaws, and it just kind of came down on the dog's leg, and so the dog's leg was crushed, and they had to wind up amputating, and the dog had a couple of other issues. And so they posted on their Facebook group that the vet said it's going to cost $5,000 for the surgery and the whatever else this dog needed. And guess how long it took them to raise that money? Like 2 days. It was crazy. And what we see in animal welfare is that happens all the time. And I think it's this concept that people like to fill a hole. And when you can share that, here's what we're trying to do, and here's the gap, here's where we need your help, a lot of people get really excited about that. So figure out how you can work this in. How can you talk about the need and the gap in your end of year fundraising campaign? Again, when we use the Hunger Knows No Holiday, then we would talk about the number of people in our area who are food insecure and what that meant. And honestly, how big of a burden the holidays were financially on those people when they're already struggling to put food on the table. And now it's winter, which means their utility bill is going to go up. And now their kids are, really hoping that Santa's going to come. Like, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem for these people. So that was an opportunity to educate folks about the need. And we saw a lot of people respond, and they would send me notes on the reply cards or with their checks, and they would say, like, I had no idea. And, I forget that other people are struggling, and I could tell that people were really getting it, which was awesome. You want your donors to get it. Okay, Dawn's got a good question. What do you do when the gap still feels massive? Okay, so Dawn's organization serves people in poverty. She's got a lot of different programs. We're serving about 3,000 people a year, but there are still 12,000 more a year we can serve. Okay, that's a good question. So what you want to do is break it down into how many more do you want to try to serve next year? We had the same issue at the food bank. When we finally figured out how to calculate the number of people who were likely to be food insecure, we were handling, I think it was about 6 million pounds of food a year, and we could translate that into a number of meals. And then when we learned from a guy at a food bank in Michigan how to calculate the need, it was like 18 million. So it's 3 times what we were doing. And yeah, that pretty much took the wind out of my sails really fast. And I knew that we couldn't close that gap in a year. We probably couldn't close that gap in 2 or 3 years. But I could say to the donors, here's what our next step is. We're not going to go from 3,000, 12,000 in 2019, but we want to go from 3,000 to 5,000. We want to go from 3,000 to 6 or 4 or whatever that is. So think about what you can do that you feel confident you can do, but maybe it's a little stretch, because then you can really talk to people about why you need their help. And that'll help you. That'll help get people excited about what you're doing. Good question. Okay, so back to my example I used a minute ago of the 15 animals who arrive every day. We're finding homes for 12. That means about 3 animals a day are being euthanized. We need your help to find them homes too, so that no animal is put down. I think you guys are getting that. Now, here's a really great tip. So for those of you that are still, maybe your organization is pretty new and you're still wrestling with this, use these words. So that. So that. Here's how you use them. If I say, what does your organization do? And you say, well, we provide after-school tutoring services to kids in elementary school. Say, okay, good. Add these words at the end. We provide tutoring to kids in elementary school so that, and then fill in the blank. And that will get you to the juicy part of the message. That will get you to that piece that donors are going to get excited about. So most of you are probably talking in your messaging about programs, and that's not the most exciting piece. You want to talk more about outcomes and impact and less about program. So instead of talking about, well, we provide food rescue and recovery services to blah, 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 which that literally is what we said at the food bank. So that, why do we do the food rescue and recovery? We provide those services so that nobody goes to bed hungry. See, that's the juice of it. So if you're struggling with the messaging, use these words, so that. You might want to write that one down with the nugget that I mentioned about 7 minutes ago. Use those words, so that, so you can get to the juice of your message. Because here's the deal, really. Donors care about increasing the good, decreasing the bad, saving more lives. In short, they want to make a difference. And this is important that we keep this in mind. It's easy, and I get it. It's easy when you're busy and you're the fundraiser and you're like, I need to raise $12,000 with this appeal in order to pay for everything and keep my budget on track and all that. I get that. But if you go to your donors and say, I need to raise $12,000 to fund my budget, what are you going to get? You're going to get crickets. Nobody's going to respond to that because there's nothing appealing about it. There's no emotion in it. So we have to talk about, okay, what happens when we raise that $12,000? Add the so that in there. We need $12,000 so that what happens? What gets to happen? What gets to change because you raise that money? So I'm really pounding on the messaging, but this is really important. I'm telling you, there's a very large animal welfare organization that last year, their campaign was help us reach our goal. And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I wanted to call them and say, who is your consultant? Because this is terrible. Nobody wants to give to help you reach your $80,000 goal. I mean, honestly, here's what happens in that situation where they have an $80,000 goal. They said, oh, we have a match. The first $20,000 is going to be matched. Well, that's great. But now I feel like my $25 gift doesn't make any difference at all. Do you see that? If their goal is 80,000 and I can give 25, I feel like my donation doesn't make any difference at all. Now, had they said your gift of $6.20 will save a cat for one day, and if you want to do it for a week, it's however much that is, $42 and whatever it is. And if you want to do it for a month, it's $120 something. Now my $25 donation feels like it matters. You guys getting this? See, this is why we talk a lot about core number. We talk a lot about figuring out what your numbers are, because when you use those numbers, people feel like their donation matters. If they feel like theirs is just a drop in the bucket, they're not going to give. They're going to go look for someplace else where they feel like they're making a difference. Remember, this is all about how the donor feels. So we want to keep it all donor focused. So I've got for you on the screen just some examples of egocentric language when it's all about you. We've been around for 30 years. We have 6 programs. We save 500 animals a month. We serve 10 counties. That's all factual. There's nothing about that grabs my heartstrings and moves me to give. But when you say you helped us change lives, with your help, 500 animals are saved each month. Your gift helps us reach animals in 10 counties. That's better. That's better. If you can tell the donor your donation of $10.20 is going to do X, now you're talking. Now, if any of you are struggling with what your number is, that's what the Facebook group is for. We'll also have a Q&A call here in a couple of weeks. You can just let me know and I'll help you figure this out. Sometimes it's hard to see. When you're right in the middle of it, it's really hard to see, like, what is our number? And, maybe there's a different way to break it down. There's a different way to look at it. And I want to make sure you've got that because it can be such a critical part of your message as you go into the year-end fundraising season. You want to also use what we call hero language. So as you're communicating with donors and you're asking and you're thanking, especially when you're thanking, you want to use this hero language, which means you use the words you and your a lot. Your donation will help provide this service. Your support means that these children get after-school tutoring. Your gift will help change lives. And you leave out we and us and our. You use those very sparingly. You see, donors want to be the hero. All right, have you figured out yet that a lot of this really applies to all year long? It really does. But it's really important this time of year because there's a lot of competition. Your donors are gonna have dozens of appeals show up in their mailbox and in their inbox, and guess what they're going to respond to? They're going to respond to the ones that make them feel good, the ones from organizations they really like. So again, if you're not planning to ask for anything, if your appeal doesn't go out until 1st of November, this is actually good news because you've got time to use some hero language. You've got time to do what I call loving them up. You got time to send out a couple of newsletters between now and then and really helping your donors get it that you appreciate them. Anne's asking, what about calling to thank donors? Of course, I would open with your support has moved things forward so much or something, but as you continue to talk, That's a good question. So here's what I'd want you to do, and this will take a little practice, but if you try it a few times, you'll get really good at it. Instead of talking about your organization and saying, well, we have these 6 programs and we have 15 kids in this program, and here's what happened. Instead of, we talk about the kids in the program. Don't talk about the program itself unless you say, we know the children in the program seem to absolutely love it. They show up every afternoon. They're very excited. They leave with smiles on their face. We're hearing from the teachers that the kids are better behaved in school and their reading scores are coming up. So you're going to talk about the program way more in terms of the children or whoever is in your program, what your program does. Talk more about that and the happy outcomes and less about how you make it happen. And that is a little bit of a shift, and that actually is for everybody, not just for Anne. It is a bit of a shift that I'm telling you, the more you practice it, the better you'll get at that. And it'll suddenly become second nature to talk about what's changed. I did this crazy thing earlier this year where I needed to ask somebody for a sponsorship for an event. And I knew this woman, and her company has sponsored the event in the past, not last year, but in the past. And so I went out, this was for the horse rescue. I literally went out and I went to the farm and outside the fence of one of the donkeys that was out there and shot her a video and just said, hey, I'm out here. Here's Seymour. Here's his story. Your sponsorship is going to help us take care of more animals just like Seymour. And then I just emailed her. I threw it up on YouTube, made it unlisted so only she could see it with the link. And then I emailed it to her and said, hey, Kim, watch this. And so she emailed me pretty fast. It was just a day or two later. And she goes, yeah, we're in. And then I saw her at the event and she was like, oh man, you just really got me. She said, I wasn't sure about it until you showed that video and I was all in on the ask. That's really getting into the program and talking about the outcome and not so much the program, because I could have emailed her and said, oh, we have this many horses and here's what's going on and blah blah blah. But it was just so different. Video is a powerful tool. If you're not using video, you need to be, and you need to go ahead and be thinking about how you can use it. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas before we're done today. Just go ahead and be thinking about the video. Last thing I want to say about messaging, and I'm going to move on. Stick to your brand. Most of you have a very informal, authentic, sincere kind of brand. None of you have organizations, I don't think, where everything is very formal and stiff. Whatever your brand is, stick to your brand. Use the same voice. Doesn't matter if it's a post on Facebook or it's a newsletter, it's a video that you're shooting. It needs to have the same feel, the same voice, and the same feel. Donors need to have a sense that the same person is writing and sending everything. Even if they're not, it still has to have the same feel. And don't be afraid to repeat yourself. I've had people say this to me. I can't tell that story on Facebook. I just put it in the newsletter. Yeah, you can. You can use the same stories over and over. I guarantee you, nobody's going to call you and go, why did you use that story twice? Now, you might have a board member who pays attention to it and is like, I don't know if we should use the same story. It's okay. It's perfectly okay to repeat yourself. It's perfectly okay to share the same stats or the same updates. It's okay to share stuff multiple times. Actually, it's not a bad thing because people are more likely to get it. All right, that's messaging. You got to think about if you want to do an integrated campaign, which I would recommend, what do you want to raise money for? And what's the message of the campaign going to be? If you want to raise money for general operations, that's fine. You can use a message like I used at the food bank of hunger knows no holiday. When we raised money using that message, it all went to general operations. But I was able to talk about the average family who is food insecure and they're struggling. Here's what their story is. Here's what an average day for them looks like. Here's the choice they make every day between paying the electric bill and buying food, or buying medicine and buying food. And so you can do that. Start thinking about what you want to raise money for, what message you want to use, and if you want some feedback on that, throw it in the Facebook group. All right, let's talk about timing. Timing. Timing has to do with when you put things out there and how it fits with other things that are happening in your community and in your organization. Some of you have other activities that are not fundraising activities, but they're happening. Like maybe um, maybe you have an open house that's happening at some point in your organization in November or December, or maybe you're having a volunteer thank you party, or there may be other things that you're doing, and that's when having a calendar can really be to your advantage to help you make sure that you don't have too many things stacked right on top of each other. You don't want to wear your volunteers out by asking them to do too many things during the holiday season when they have a lot on their plate anyway. So you want to be super careful about that, looking not just at what you want to do fundraising wise, but what else is happening. And there may be things in your community, like in Knoxville, there's a pretty big event that happens. Oh, it's late in November. Downtown, there's an area. Phyllis will know what I'm talking about because she is in this area. There's a place called Market Square, and it's a pedestrian mall that has stores all around it. And the city puts a huge Christmas tree up there every year, and then they light it, and it's a big deal. And you can go down for the lighting, and there's carolers, and there's music, and they have games and hot chocolate. It's kind of a big deal. So if you know there's something like that that's happening in your community that's kind of a big deal, it's probably not a good idea to schedule something on the same night, unless you're going to do it as part of whatever that activity is. Sometimes you can do that sort of thing and you can make it work. So if you had an organization that was a block away from that, could you do an open house that night and invite people to come by and visit you and warm up, get out of the cold for a little while? Yes, you could. You certainly could. Could you approach the city about doing some kind of luminary on the square that night? Yes, you could. There's things that you could do that would fit in with that kind of an event, but you have to really think about it and plan those ahead. Which, by the way, I had an animal shelter in North Carolina that did luminaries with a community that had something like that. It was like this big, not really an open house, but it was this, gosh, I don't even remember what they called it. Anyway, it was community wide, and all the shops were open late, and they had school groups that came and sang and did all kinds of really cool stuff. So it was a community wide event, and they sold luminaries and made quite a bit of money um, in the weeks leading up to the event and actually at the event that night. It was pretty cool. All right, so let me see if I can pull one of these. I'm going to open up the calendar page. Here we go. So I've got two sets of handouts in here for you, and one of them is more of a checklist, and this one is more of a calendar. I kind of like the calendar myself, but I wanted to give you two different options on that. So here's the calendar, and it's got a whole lot of stuff on it. I went ahead and pre-loaded it with some things that you probably ought to be thinking about and working on, and you'll see that it starts in October. There's not a calendar sheet for September, and one of the reasons I did that is because, well, we're already into September, and you can make a calendar sheet for September if you want to, but definitely you've got time to start thinking about what you want to do October, November, and December. And you'll see that there's everything from freshen up your thank you letter, which you ought to be doing. You ought to be freshening up your thank you letter every month, freshening up your website every month, checking out your donate now button to make sure it works and to see what people get when they do that. I actually do this a lot for my private clients. One of the first things that I do actually is I go and make a donation on their website just to see what happens. Do they have a thank you page, or is there no thank you page? Do I get a nice email, or is it very bland? And then we start to fix a lot of those things. In other words, this is sort of like dusting your house and buying a new welcome mat before your holiday company arrives. So you can read through all the details. I'm going to point out some of the highlights here for you, but you can go through and really look at the detail and change it so that it fits for you. So for example, I have on October 15th to send out your email newsletter. Well, if your newsletter doesn't go out on the 15th, if you send it on the first Tuesday of the month, we'll definitely change that. Make it reflect what you normally do. I personally like an email newsletter around the middle of the month because You're about to have a lot of months that have crazy things happening, either right at the end of the month or the first of the month. And that can get in the way of people paying attention to what's going on in your organization. You want to give yourself plenty of time if you're going to be writing a newsletter, writing a fall appeal, all those things that you're going to be writing and creating. You want to give yourself plenty of time on those. Even if you're like me and you're like, writing is not a big deal, I can get that done. I really recommend you start early because some crazy thing will happen. And remember, timing is important. Timing of when you're going to mail your appeal or when you're going to email it, and you don't want anything to get in the way of that. All right, so somebody was asking earlier, was it Megan? Let me go back, asking about mailing versus digital and what should you do. So I'm a good consultant because the answer is it depends. Here's the long answer on this. If your audience is used to receiving things from you by email, it's perfectly okay to email your appeal. If they're going to have a hissy fit if you mail something, you probably want to email. Usually environmental groups can email. A lot of our animal groups can email an appeal. However, if a lot of your people, if a lot of your donors are older, let's say they're baby boomers and older, so what is that, like 60 or 65 plus, it's probably 65 plus. If a lot of your folks are older, they may well respond better to a print appeal because that's what they're used to responding to. You're going to have to test it for your organization to see what works better. One of my clients is a horse rescue in New Hampshire, and we have tried a couple of different things. We have tried to print and mail, and we've tried email appeal. And she and I both are quite surprised. Her mailed appeals actually do really well. They do really well. She was just sharing some numbers with me not too long ago. Her response rate is just crazy. It's like 15%. Now, in the world of direct appeal that you send through the mail, that's considered a really good response rate. In other words, if you mail 100 letters, you get 15 people who are sending back a donation. I know in some instances we might say, really? That's all? Well, 15% that's considered really good. It's kind of like an open rate with an email. 15, 20%, 20% is probably considered about average right now for open rates. It's just how it is. So anyway, she's getting a 15% response rate. Her average gift size was ridiculous. It was like $80. Across the board, average gift sizes will run about 35. So if you're doing some kind of an appeal, go back and check out what your average gift size is. 35 is about average. So her response rate and her average gift size are both very, very high. And we were pretty excited about that. And so we looked at the numbers from the last 3 years, and we saw that they're growing. They're growing quite a bit. One of the things so there's a couple of things that I think make that happen for her. Number one is her messaging is very consistently all about the horses. It's all about them. It's never about her. It's never about the organization's need to keep the lights on or their budget or anything like that. It's always about the horses and taking care of them and feeding them. And the other thing she's super good at is really consistent communication. Her newsletters go out every month without fail. She sends them out very consistently. They're short, they're easy to read, and it's always a feel-good story. It's never like, let me introduce you to our 6 new board members, which nobody cares about your board members. It's always an update on a horse. And she shares a lot of photos and video on Facebook, and her people love her. And I think an awful lot of it is it's consistent messaging, and it's very authentic. Very authentic, and she shares a lot of behind-the-scenes kind of stuff, which I think that's part of what makes it work. Okay, so there's let me go back to the calendar for a minute. Several things here that we do want to make sure that you're really nailing as you think about the timing. If you're going to do some kind of a print appeal, if you're going to write a fundraising letter and put it in the mail, don't do it any later than about the first week of November. So I would recommend that you do it middle to late October. That's about the best time. Why? Well, you get on into November and you're going to start losing donors because they're thinking about their Thanksgiving plans. They're already starting to think about those. So let me move on down to November here on this calendar. I like to use my mom as an example of a donor who's probably on your list. I guarantee you that she is already thinking about Thanksgiving. For mamas, and I'm about to experience this as well with my family that's growing. Um, you start to think about pulling everybody together and getting all the hens back in all the chicks back into the hen house, right? Think about your whole family showing back up, and you start thinking about what that's going to be like and what food you want to make. And I'm telling you, past about the second week of November, you've lost her, because she has got her head in recipes and decorations, and she's all about it, thinking about all that. And I think a lot of other donors are like that too. Now, a couple of things you want to pay attention to in November. If you want to send out some kind of a Thanksgiving card, you can certainly do that. If your organization, if you struggle with sending out a holiday card because you have people of a lot of different faiths who support your organization, then a Thanksgiving card is probably a safer thing than a holiday card. And not that many people send out Thanksgiving cards. So you could do that. You could do Thanksgiving cards just for your top 10 or 20 donors. And that would be a really nice warm touch for those folks. I would recommend that you do some kind of thankathon early-ish in November, definitely before Thanksgiving. And what that looks like, and you can do it one of two ways. You can either grab a list of your major donors, or you can pull everybody who's given this year, or everybody who's given in the last 12 months. You can put a short script together, gather a lot of people up, and just divvy out the names, and everybody start calling. And really, the whole point is to call these people to say, thank you so much for your support this year. We really appreciate it. It's meant a lot. And then you can tell them one quick story if you want to. Some people will engage in conversation, some of them won't. Even if you can't get somebody on the phone, that you leave a message, it's a very nice thing to do, and donors will appreciate it. I can't tell you the last time that I got a thank you call from any organization at the holidays. It has been years. And I think that's a shame, because it's not that hard of a thing to do. I know for a lot of us, the phone weighs about 100 pounds, and we don't want to pick it up. We don't like calling people because we're afraid we're bothering them. But here's the thing. A donor is going to be interested in knowing that their donation has made a difference. So if you call them to say, hey, this is Dawn. I'm calling from the Link of Coleman County. Just want to say thank you for your support this year. It has meant the world to us. And let me tell you about the kids in our kindergarten readiness program and how your gift changed their lives. That's a pretty easy call to make. If you script it out ahead of time, you can involve some volunteers or some board members, which, by the way, this is an excellent, excellent activity for board members, especially if you have some that are really afraid of fundraising. Making these thank you calls can be really cool. It can be a good way to get them involved. So definitely do a thankathon. It's a great way to not only express your appreciation, but it deepens the relationship and it engages the donor. They're just going to feel good. They'll walk away from that feeling really good. Another thing that you want to start early-ish in November is promoting your Giving Tuesday campaign. So if you're going to do some kind of Giving Tuesday campaign, which looks like, is that the 27th? Looks like it. So it's a Tuesday after Thanksgiving. You want to plan this out well. Dawn says I'm hired. I did a great job with the thank you. You want to plan this out well in advance, and you want to have some kind of email teaser. It is not too early to send out an email teaser 2 weeks ahead of time, and then a week ahead of time, and then the day before, and then multiple times the day of. That's not too much. I know some of you may be thinking, oh, I cannot email my people that many times. You can, but if that seems like too much, then you can ratchet it back a little bit. The point is, if you want to have a successful Giving Tuesday, number one, you got to pick something that people are going to want to support. And number two, you got to promote it early and often, giving them a reason to care. And here's where the messaging is so critical. It can't just be support our goal. We're trying to raise $10,000. It's got to be, and this is what my client Lisa Booth did last year. I'm going to talk about her in just a minute. As she talked about, help us save more dogs. Help us save more dogs, and here's how. People got on board with that. It was pretty cool. All right. One other thing that you can do in November is a thank you video. And this is something that you'll want to really think about and work on ahead of time. I've got lots of clients who do these, and I can give you some good examples, and they work. They work so very well. They work, they're just amazing and it can be a thank you that's like on behalf of the organization. Thank you. Um, Sorry about all the animal groups. I was working with Pet Community Center in Nashville several years ago, and those of you who were at the Inspired Fundraising Retreat, you saw this video, the one where it said, "Thanks to you, this many dogs um, got microchipped. Thanks to you, this many community cats were helped. Thanks to you, this many space surgeries. Thanks to you." Remember that video and how powerful that was? Boy, that is awesome to be able to send that out like the day before Thanksgiving or even Thanksgiving Day. You can even send that kind of stuff Thanksgiving Day because people will be sitting at a relative's house, and guess what they're doing? They're on their phone and they're poking around on Facebook. You laugh, but it's true and you know it. So a thank you video that day can be super duper powerful. In December, let's look at December real quick, and then I got a couple more things before we wrap up. In December, if you're going to send out a holiday card, send it early. Don't put anything in the mail past about the 14th of the month because it's going to get lost in the shuffle and people are not going to read it. What you do want to do, in addition to your regular stuff of keeping the stories going on Facebook, updating your thank you letter, your website, all that, pitch a story to the local media about the 12th or the 13th of the month. Your local media would love to take off between Christmas and New Year's, and in order to do that, they've got to have stories in the can. So this works for newspaper and TV and talk radio. What you can do is pitch a story that will still be good. So it's called evergreen. It still has a lot of value for that week. Pitch the story and let them shoot the story the week before Christmas, and then they will be ready to go. They'll have it in the can, ready to share that week. And honestly, that's a fantastic week to be in the news because you need to be emailing out. You need to be showing up loud and proud on social media between the 26th and the 31st. And you need to have several emails go out that week to remind people that they can make a last minute gift to count on their 2018 taxes. That's not the best messaging to use. I mean, you can use that messaging, you can use the gist of that, but what's better is if you can use Lisa's tact of, hey, your donation is going to help us save more dogs in 2019. Give now. Here's how much it costs to rescue a dog. Make your last minute 2018 gift now. And that actually worked really well for her. So you can go through and read all the details on these and ask questions if you need to. I'm happy to chat more with you about that. Let me talk about cross-channel promotion and what that means. What it means is to talk about things in other places. In other words, if you send out a print appeal, if you send out a letter through the mail, follow it up in about 2 weeks with an email version, a shortened version in an email. That's a really powerful 1-2 punch that can result in a higher ROI for your appeal. Promote Giving Tuesday in your email newsletter. Also put it in your email signature. If you're using Gmail or Outlook or whatever, you've got a place at the bottom where you've got your email signature. Promote Giving Tuesday in your email signature. Why not? It's super easy to do that. You can even create some kind of little graphic and drop in there. Promote your final year-end appeal in a news story. So in Lisa's case, if she told in the news about maybe she had a record-breaking year and saved more dogs than ever before, and then in the news she could talk about that and what it takes to save a dog, and then say, in our New Year's campaign will be focused on saving an additional 35 dogs to start off the new year with. So you can cross-promote things, and it will actually get you a little more traction. And it really helps brings attention to other things in various channels. So again, in your email, if you're promoting social media, that reminds people like, oh yeah, I need to go look at their Facebook page. And wherever you're promoting, it helps just drive people to the places where you want them to be. Sharon is asking me about if I've heard of student scholarship organizations. Could it work to mix Giving Tuesday with a student scholarship organization? I'm not really sure I know what you mean by that. So if you want to give me an explanation real quick of what a student scholarship organization is, I'll be happy to circle back to that. And I know you can do scholarships on Giving Tuesday, wink, wink. Sharon, who's asking the question, actually did raise quite a bit of money last year on Giving Tuesday with for scholarships for her organization as a private school. All right, so you type that in. Let me go on, and then I'll circle back around to that. Oh, and you're fast. Donors give to a student scholarship organization. They get a tax credit dollar for dollar. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, I'd try to work that in, especially if you're promoting scholarships. You're talking to people about why this is important, and then you can go, and by the way, if you give here, you're going to get the tax credit dollar for dollar. You might well have some people who will jump on that. Now, tax credits, you don't have those in every state. I worked with an organization in Virginia, and they had tax credits there. We don't have those in Tennessee. So if some of you are wondering, like, what the heck is tax credit? Don't worry about it. It might be something that's not happening in your state. But if it does happen in your state, that can be kind of cool. Yeah, you can promote both. As long as you work it in. I wouldn't make the tax credit what you lead with. I would make that more of a, hey, by the way, if you want to do this, here's another cool thing that can happen. Okay, so cross-channel promotion, promote online stuff offline and vice versa. Link to something you've already shared. So, hey, if you do get a story in the news, then you definitely want to get a link to it, because then you can share it in an email newsletter. You can put it on Facebook. You can put it on Instagram. You can put it in a lot of places, which is really cool. You want to make sure that you're doing that. All right, calendaring, we've actually been talking about. One of the important things that you can do with calendaring is to back things up. In other words, you identify the result you want, like the day that you want your newsletter to go out. Break the activity into tiny steps. So what has to happen before that newsletter can go out? Well, somebody has to write it and review it and load it into MailChimp and make sure the list is right and click the button. So there's several things that have to happen, and you can back it up so then you know what date you need to start in order to actually be able to hit the send button on the day that you want it to go out. This is really getting into systemization. And it's super helpful, especially if you need to involve other people. Nobody likes to be asked at the last minute to do something, to review something, or to write something. So when you have a bit of a schedule and you see this one actually gives you 10 days from the time you start writing a newsletter until you hit send, which is probably kind of a lot. But if you know you're going to be super busy in December and there's a lot else going on, then having 10 days is not a bad thing, because you might actually get it out on time. And if you need to involve somebody to either proofread it or be involved in some kind of design or graphic creation, then you definitely want extra time. All right, so I want to talk just quickly about Lisa Booth with Good Karma. Last year, I helped her plan out her Minnesota Gives Day, which happens like a week before Giving Tuesday. And so we decided to focus on Minnesota Gives Day instead of Giving Tuesday, because there's a lot of promotion. There's a lot of promotion about Minnesota Gives Day, and she's right outside Minneapolis. So she was able to take advantage of that and kind of surf that wave, which was super helpful. So I looked at what she initially had, and it was all about the organization and their budget and their goal, and there was a lot of stuff on there that had nothing to do with anything. And we calculated her core number, and what we figured out was it was $12.50 to provide a day of care to a rescue dog. And if you see the graphic, you may not be able to tell, but over on the right under the green donate word, the first option is $12.50 to provide a day of care. So we calculated her number, and she was on fire about that. And so we started using that number, and she used it everywhere. We did the Minnesota Gives Day, and then we took her campaign from then, which was like the second, third week of November, all the way through the end of the year. So we just kept going with this $12.50, rescue a dog, save a dog, save a dog, save a dog. And it really worked. And here's the crazy thing that happened. She had done Minnesota Gives Day before, and about the most that she had ever raised was $8,000. So we decided a $10,000 goal that's probably a reasonable goal, but boy, wouldn't it be amazing if we could raise $20,000. So not only did she do this, and this was what the page looked like on Minnesota Gives Day, but we also planned out email promotions. So we wrote a couple of emails and she sent those out to her list like, hey, it's Minnesota Gives Day and you can support Good Karma. And she had a play on the words of that. It was really fun. And then we were all over Facebook that day. She was just every couple of hours on Facebook about what was going on with the campaign. When the dust settled, she didn't raise 10,000. She didn't raise 20. She raised $27,750. It was crazy. I could hear her screaming all the way to Tennessee from Minneapolis. It was nuts. She was so excited. And I think an awful lot of it had to do with the messaging and had to do with all the preparation. And as a matter of fact, she told me, she said, here's what I learned from this. And I wanted to share this with you because I think it was very valuable. She said, we stopped talking about the overall organization. We stopped saying support us, and we started talking about the work and the dogs and why it matters. And she felt like that really made a big difference. People got excited about wanting to save dogs. And she said, I really think my donors just want their money to save lives. They don't care about the overhead. They don't care about all the other stuff. And she started telling featured stories about dogs, about specific cases and what the story was and how they got to Good Karma and what their life is like now. And also we broke the cost down per dog. We figured out that $12.50 a day to take care of a dog. She said what she thought was more important than anything else were these two things I put in red: looking ahead, not back. So initially she wanted to raise money to replenish their medical fund. A lot of animal groups have a medical fund where they use the money to pay for surgeries and heartworms and things where animals come in with these just incredible, crazy medical issues. And she wanted to do that. And I talked her out of that. And she said, that is essentially looking back. If we're trying to replenish it, we're trying to raise money we've already spent, and nobody wants to do that. She said what was better was when we said, look, here's how many dogs we want to rescue in 2018. Here's what we want to do in the coming year to make a difference. You can save a dog. Here's how much it costs. And people responded to that. So it was about looking ahead, not back. And ultimately, we talked about lives being saved. And we use that messaging. Your donation will save this dog. Your donation will do this. Your money will be used for that. All with the forward looking of saving more dogs. And it totally worked. It was, to the, $27,000, it worked, which was fantastic. By the way, that $27,000 was just Minnesota Gives Day. We took that all the way through December, and she had a couple of smaller things happening in December, and then the year-end push, and I think the total wound up being close to $40,000. It was crazy. It was so awesome. I was so excited for her. And you can do the same kind of thing. It's all about nailing your messaging. That's why we spent half our time today talking about messaging, because it is critical. If you get out in front of people, and even if they're the right people, but you say something boring, they're not going to give. So you got to get the messaging nailed, and then you need a plan. And that's why I gave you the calendar and the checklist. You got some tips in your handouts as well. You got a lot of things there to work with. So what's one thing that you can do this coming week to get started on your year-end fundraising plan? Because now is when you need to really be thinking about this. You need to be thinking about your campaign. You need to be thinking about your campaign goal and what you're going to tell people about that goal. Not, hey, we want to raise $20,000, but help us change this many lives, and here's how much that's going to cost. Figure out your number. Figure out what your integrated campaign theme is going to be. I would love for you to go post those in the Facebook group and let me see what you're thinking about. I would love to give you some support around that. If you're not sure, definitely post and let me see what you're thinking about. I'm happy to help you with those things. All right. Oh my gosh, we're a couple minutes over. I get really excited about this stuff. I know I'm a total nerd, fundraising nerd, proud of it. Here's what's coming up next. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about how to find and keep excellent volunteers. Volunteers can be huge for helping grow your organization. Volunteers can help you execute your year-end campaign. They can help you promote your campaign. Many hands make light work. It's very true. I know some of you may be rolling your eyes right now about volunteers, and that's okay. I've got some really good stuff that I'm going to share with you on the 20th about how to find and keep excellent volunteers. It really can be done. All right, that is it for today, you guys. Would you do me a favor, drop over into the Facebook group and let me know what your big takeaways were from today? I would love to hear them. And if you got questions, ask them there. Otherwise, I will see you back here on the 20th. Bye, everybody.